For the first time, in New Zealand, I've been brave enough to put my whole title in front of my name because I know I'm in a very esteemed company of researchers here. So today I will be talking about, the perspectives, and these are my personal opinions, obviously, perspectives that are at play when you are building data science and artificial intelligence in the realm of public sector, and how it is different, how the considerations are a little bit different from when you're doing it for a larger company or a private sector company. So I'll start straight away with the incentives that are at play when you're working for a public or a government organization. Some of the really crucial aspects of our life are in the hands of the government and public sector, and therefore there is a deep sense of accountability and responsibility that is at play. Stuff like healthcare, education, transport, defense. So the bandwidth to make mistakes is very, very low. And therefore, there are some of the key traits that you'll find when we go about implementing some of these technologies. There's a lot of accountability. The leadership is justifiably very, very risk averse because privacy of data of people and citizens, sometimes people's lives are at stake. And obviously, by default, we are not supposed to discriminate or be biased against any section of the society. We have to be very, very deliberate and considerate about that. Let's get to the private sector. A for-profit firm, they have a lot of valuable functions to perform. A lot of the recent advances in artificial intelligence is thanks to the research and the advancements that is driven by some of the large private sector firms. But we have to understand that they operate in the interest of the shareholders and the owners of those organizations. They use AI to accomplish their business goals, and while adhering to existing rules and regulations and laws of the land that are at play. They do not often self-regulate, and this almost goes contrary to the competition that they are against, because they're competing for clients against other private sector organizations. As opposed to that public sector, you have a fixed, you can say, client base, which is the citizens or the residents of the region that the organization is looking after. So talking about the incentives, this was summarized very well by a disillusioned data scientist in a line. The best minds of my generation are thinking about how to make people click ads, and that sucks. Some of these go a little bit overboard, but the message here is that there is a need for, sometimes to step back and see what is the larger picture here. There is a race of perception. When the race heats up, you tend to cut corners, and the response to OpenAI's ChatGPT from Google was, in its own admission, they created a demo which in parts was faked. Very recent reports of how some of the tech giants cut corners to harvest data to feed the very data-hungry language models that they had. And again, this perception race tends to keep going. There was an Amazon cashierless store where it was you walk in with a basket, a shopping basket, pick up your stuff that you're interested in, and straight away walk out, no cashiers involved. And apparently all of that was managed through AI, but probably not so much. There were people sitting in Asia somewhere looking at the video feeds and invoicing you. So there's a lot of that happening as well. And in that race, we can, as I said, sometimes lose sight of the end goal and the larger picture, and sometimes get unethical and illegal. So when OpenAI ran out of data, unstructured data that is on the web, they started harvesting YouTube videos. They created a specific tool that would, speech to text tool that would transcribe all the YouTube videos. YouTube terms of conditions explicitly state that you're not allowed to do so, but that was besides the point. Google later apparently also broadened their terms of use to do something similar. Having said that, there is a lot of benefits to AI to the larger public, and I don't think there is a second opinion about that in this room. AI doesn't tire, where human decisions can be sometimes fallible. But there's a dilemma at play here when we are starting to implement AI in the public sector. To deliver efficiencies, to target the right people for the right kind of benefits and services, we need to collect a right amount or a lot of data from the citizens. To collect that amount of data, you'll then need the systems and tools and services that are able to accommodate and hold that data and process that. And once you have that, then you start to have the need to have techniques for processing that big data, algorithms, and so on. And that's where the perception thing comes in, wherein are you looking to be in control of your citizens, or are you looking to deliver just some services? So there is a very, very thin line to tread there. Then a lot of the data that is collected by the private sector is often used by the public sector. And with the competing incentives in place, sometimes it can be an inherent conflict. A very small example, there's this campaign here, I'm not a typo. So in UK, so 40% of UK children's names are typos if you type in a Word document or some of the common popular spell checkers. Often you'll find that these typos are coming from certain ethnicities, names from certain ethnicities. So obviously this data and these models are built by private sector, which are used universally. There are challenges and risks when we are trying to implement AI in public sector. Most of the models, there's a popular saying that every model is wrong, but some are useful. Most of the models are wrong. They miss out on fringes. They don't model the world perfectly. But we cannot afford to avoid the fringes or the outliers that a model misses out on. As I said, we cannot be seen to be biased against any particular group or section of the society. Trust is paramount, and that's why we need to be doubly sure of what we are implementing, what is the purpose, how we are implementing it, and so on. Once you lose public trust, it's very, very hard to gain it back. Resource constraints are always at play. Setting up huge data analytics and AI teams is not always the top consideration of a public sector organization that is in the front lines of delivering services to the citizens. If you are working in a private sector organization, you can pick a bunch of data just to try and prove a concept. You can do an experiment and come up with some suggestions. But in public sector, even to take some data to do an experimentation, we have to be very, very careful. And that first barrier to cross is quite high. In general, productionization of artificial intelligence technologies is very, very hard. I'll delve into it a little bit later as well. You cannot rely on tech a lot. You cannot digitize everything. You have to think about that 70-year-old pensioner who only understands paper-based forms. you have to account for those specially abled people who are not that digital savvy. So even if, and you cannot keep changing your user experience all the time. You always need to have backups in place because in healthcare, if the hospital system goes down, there are lives at stake. In emergency response situations, it's something similar. So I'll just pause and delve a little bit into the definition of AI and why it is important. Again, I'm pretty sure there is a shared understanding that there is need for regulation in AI. And if you want to regulate it, you need to have a shared understanding and a common definition of what artificial intelligence means. Shared understanding because a model built here can be used in Australia or in another country. So you need to agree on that definition. What has happened is because of both the pace of the developments in AI as well as mostly because of the pace of developments in AI, the goalposts have moved, the definitions have shifted and quite dramatically. I'll just give you a few examples. AI is a marketing term, and it always leads to that euphoria whenever a new groundbreaking tool comes into play. And it goes back to the times of Eliza, which was the first most popular chatbot system built in 70s or 80s, I guess. A rule-based system, a lot of euphoria around it. If you implement any system like that today, you won't call it AI. You'll call it a simple software system because it's a completely rule-based declarative system. And along the line, in the time horizons between various AI winters, we have had similar surges in interest. We have had IBM Deep Blue that beat Gary Kasparov, and then we had Watson that won Jeopardy. Siri came with a lot of fanfare, Alexa and AlphaGo when Google's model beat that. It all led to those discussions around, are we closer to AGI and so on. As early as till 2022, the definition of artificial intelligence has kept on being revised by OECD countries. And the definition of artificial intelligence that appears in the EU AI Act is again very abstract, very different from even the definition of 2022 that you look back at. Tries to encompass a lot of things. I'm not too sure if you pick this definition and I don't know if you pick a smart traffic light system, would you classify that as an AI or not? So the jury is out there. I did a very, very quick research of what the definition of artificial intelligence, at least in the public sector in New Zealand is. And that was a quick research. I may not have done a comprehensive one. So there are definitions from Archives New Zealand. There is definition from the Privacy Commissioner. The DIA has a definition of generative AI. And all of these, I tested a few applications there, and all of these misses some or the other points that are in some of the other definitions that are in EU and OECD. So let's talk about the state of AI and the industry adoption before I get into the responsible side of things. It has led to a lot of interest, and two really big surveys of the chief data officers and chief analytics officers of some of the largest firms, both private and public sector, across the world, around 330 odd, were conducted recently, and I'll capture some of the themes here. There's a lot of buzz over generative AI. 50% of organizations are still not managing their data as an asset. And as we all know, data is the oil that feeds these models. So unless we have very well-established data analytics and AI culture, you cannot get very far with implementing AI technology. Only around 51% of board of directors have a decent enough understanding of data and AI issues and responsibilities. So there is a distinct gap in terms of literacy across the board, not just at the board level, but also across the width and breadth of the organizations. There are genuine concerns about misinformation, copyright, bias as a result of generative AI. So these surveys were conducted mostly in the context of generative AI technologies. The confidence in these technologies has dropped from 23.8% in 2023 to 15.9% in 2024. The implementations of responsible and safe practices to deal with artificial intelligence in organizations is only at around 63%. We all agree, and I know it's a common problem across the board, where the talent shortage is a real problem as well in artificial intelligence. And also to the theme of productionization. Not just productionization is hard, but the culture change, the change management that goes along with to implement any artificial intelligence technology is very, very hard. And more than 90% of the Fortune 1000 companies talk about it. Productionization is hard, and the race is on. And that almost, we hear about a tech fail almost on a weekly basis these days. Copilot and Einstein took 9 months from their early alpha releases to get into the production phase with the army of engineers and data scientists that they have at their disposal. Amazon and Apple are still at various stages of productionization of their models. Productionization is one thing, but maintaining these models into production is another different challenge. So the picture here is about the Chevrolet chatbot that was hooked directly to ChatGPT, and it started selling the Chevy cars for $1. And there are a lot of tech fails. So talking about the data foundations, there seems to be a lot of focus on the best of the breed models and the amount of parameters that are in billions and trillions. You'll start to lose count at some point of parameters that go into training some of these models. But there is very less talk about the data foundations that are needed to build any AI tech. That is also reflected in what the response of some of the CEOs or CDOs and CAOs at those Fortune 1000 companies were. Machine learning is the high interest credit card of technical debt. This picture shows that the model is only a very little part of the larger ecosystem when you go about deploying a machine learning model. You have to think about the pre-processing of the data, the post-processing of the outputs of the model, how you maintain them, and then how you hook it up to the rest of the ecosystem in your organization, and again, tie it with the change management so that people actually use all of that. So it's incredibly complex, more complex than a software system. Cost of being wrong is increasingly high. You're not just building churn models that a few errors here and there will cost you a few $100,000. Again, Google's response to ChatGPT, released in a hurry, made some errors, and it shaved off around 100 billion of their share prices. There are higher prices at play. So there are reports that riskier models were deployed in Boeing that could have led, among other factors, to some of the Boeing 737 MAX 8 crashes. The word of the year last year was hallucinate. And AI does hallucinate. You need to put guardrails around it. And therefore, the responsible practices is not anymore negotiable. I hope I have, through the previous slides, made my point. Again, from last week, there's a New York City chatbot that started recommending you to break laws to go around certain systems. Air Canada chatbot suggested some discounts which the airline was considered liable for and had to pay for it. It's our responsibility to prevent bias. Bias can be coming in different forms: deliberate, indeliberate, conscious, unconscious. And measuring unconscious bias in human decision making is very, very difficult. There was a study in 2011, and it has since then been contested, but that study said that prisoners are more likely to be granted parole early in the day or just after lunch breaks. So probably there's a correlation with the mood of the judges there. It has since been contested, but I'm pretty sure you can dig up many more examples which are similar. So unconscious bias is very, very hard to, first of all, capture and then to regulate. Context is important as well. Sometimes benefit outweighs some risks. So if you're, for example, in a national emergency like COVID, sometimes you would want to forego some of parts of your privacy if that means certain services get delivered to you faster, lives are saved, and so on. Again, in certain countries which are in need of urgent, medical imaging related technologies that could save lives. Would you detect tuberculosis sooner, or would you then consider privacy of certain individuals? Is there a trade-off in play there? In other disciplines, engineering, law, medicine, ethics is non-negotiable. It's still not so in the field of artificial intelligence, and the pace at which we are running, it's always lagging behind. Regulatory frameworks always lag behind the speed of implementation, especially so in the speed of change that is happening in the field of artificial intelligence. Black box. It's a black box is often used as an excuse, but I'm wondering, like, if you would live in a building that doesn't comply with the code of conduct, or if you drive through a bridge, your car through a bridge that doesn't comply with the structural standards and so on. I'll just play a video here just to prove that point. So those high standards of professional conduct are also needed in the field of AI, especially now that with the amount of change it can bring, and it has potential to. So there are a few recommendations, again, from the public sector point of view. And the first one is borrowed from the European Union's AI Act, which was recently adopted. AI should never be used where the risks are unacceptable in social scoring systems, in surveillance of private citizens, and so on. As much as possible, there must be an endeavor to have human in the loop all along the way, especially in these times where we are still understanding the technology. Mechanisms to ensure consistency of algorithmic processes, both during deployment and on an ongoing basis, should be there. Machine learning ops and other techniques can be at play there. Transparency is key, both of algorithms and of intent, how you're deploying those algorithms, how you're using them. Talent, developing of talent, the local context differs by countries, differs by communities, and that is very important. So there's a need for developing and nurturing local talent. A top-down approach, a regulatory heavy approach doesn't always work. We also need a bit of a bottom-up where we understand, we make an effort to understand the workings of model, the capabilities they have, and so on. We need to start to build foundational analytical systems in partnership with private sectors and so on, wherever necessary. The aim should not be to build super intelligence from get-go, but to start small, test the technology, understand it, and iterate. Partnership is the key with the limited resources that public sector often has. Partnership with academia, research institutes, private sectors, and so on. Hackathons and such events can help fast-track some of these innovation. We have partnered with several universities, and we, in multiple forms, and just a few examples of some of the master's thesis we have supervised from University of Auckland. A bit of a call to action for the research community as well. We are very fixated on, when we build models, we are very fixated on the precision, recall, area under curve, and so on. Are we measuring the social impact of the models? Are we looking at the larger picture? Are we educating enough on the responsible uses of AI? I looked at one of the programs in data science, and I asked them, are data ethics taught to the students of data science? And they had an optional paper among around 20 papers they had an option to choose from. So it's not a compulsory yet, at least in the curriculum I saw. Are we looking at systems that can mitigate bias, look to maintain user privacy, secure uses of data, and so on? There is a study that says that tech companies could run out of data to train their data-hungry models by 2026. So how does techniques like synthetic data and all these come into play in such situations? Obviously, with the intersection of so many fields at play, I don't think there is any one entity or organization that can build an AGI on its own, and therefore open source is going to lead the way, as it has so far, at least in the recent times, in the development of AI. That's me. Thank you.